What was the angriest you have seen a teacher get at a student? In my junior high, the language arts teacher called one of the students up to the front of the room and stabbed him in the stomach. To be fair, the student has been ducking the teacher's wife. He was a big sturdy 14-year-old farm boy with a fairly decent beard going on. The kid was hospitalized but lived, and wound up in another school. The teacher wound up in a forensic psych unit for a while, then was released, and was never heard from again. We had a very nice, but old and repetitive, teacher that would recount the same stories over and over. We created a bingo card and distributed it among the class. We had squares for mentions dead wife, cries, talks about being a former mayor, etc. One day a doofus buddy of mine screamed bingo, and the jig was up. He was crying and screaming at all of us with snot mixed in his tears and spit flying from his mouth. He quit the week after. I think about him sometimes and how we were little assholes to a very nice man. Our teacher was so mad that her student she was banging was taking a girl from our class to prom that she told the principal she was ducking him so they both would not be able to go. She ended up getting fired and arrested for sleeping with the student. I accidentally knocked a small glass figurine off my teacher's desk. This teacher was already known for being a bit unstable and harsh. I was terrified, but to my surprise she just ran out the classroom. Few seconds later we hear her release a scream of pure rage. She came back and composed. I was surprised to say the least. My US history teacher was a Vietnam vet and suffered from PTSD. He was also one of the sweetest, easygoing, and understanding teachers I'd ever had. He was very upfront about his PTSD to prevent mishaps in the classroom that might trigger it. During a class about the Vietnam War, one of the school jocks had loud explosions, gunfire, and what have you on a Walkman. Yeah, this was a while ago, and during a story my teacher had about his time in the Marines as one of the men who went into the Viet Cong tunnels, the kid began to play the sounds, causing my teacher to dive under his desk and begin screaming orders, much to the jock's amusement and everyone else's disgust. When the teacher's aide managed to calm the teacher down enough to get him coherent, he marched over to the kid who began to play the tape again, and my teacher just did a straight punch right to his face without a warning, breaking his nose, grabbed the Walkman and destroyed it by slammed it into the floor, and then went right back to teaching the class as if nothing happened. Student tried to get the teacher fired after this incident, but it turns out triggering a well-loved teacher's PTSD doesn't get you much sympathy. In middle school there was fundraising contest and the winning student got to pie a teacher of their choosing. Well, Corey was a little lot excited and slammed that pie into our math teacher's face. Broke his nose. His reaction was an immediate, "What the duck, you little it," in front of the entire school. Edit, for those asking. This was in Texas in the late 90s. My female English teacher slapped a guy back and forth with an Oxford English dictionary in class. To be fair, he was being kind of a douche. She had just had a miscarriage and was pretty depressed, but he kept being a jerk in class. After that, no one messed with her again. A classmate of mine was cornered by a teacher on a flight of stairs and had his nipples tweaked. To be fair, he was a jit. We had this kid in my class, Coffee, from Africa. He also happened to be my neighbor and good friend. We sat in the corner by the door with some other people and had a great time. Coffee used to get up and sneak out of class to go talk to the teacher next door and goof off. He never got busted, but one day the teacher looked up and said, "Hey, where'd Coffee go?" And we told him, and this girl beside me goes, "Hey, when he comes back in, will you act like you're really mad at him? Like just go berserk?" And the teacher just grinned. So like 4 minutes later he sneaks back in, and our corner coughs, the signal. So he turns around. "More than Coffee, where were you?" I was next to. "More than what were you doing?" I was talking to MRS. "More than so you think you can just get up from my class and walk out whenever you want?" "No, capital I just. More than do you think this is a joke? Do you want to get suspended? Do you want to go to the office?" "No please, I'm so sore." This probably went on for another 30 seconds. And every single person in the class was grinning at him and just giggling. And finally the teacher stops and laughs and pats him on the back, and the whole class roars in laughter. We told him what we did and coffee with this big brown African eyes is shaking and in his deep French accent he's just like, "I was wondering why you were all smiling at me." I said to myself, this is no laughing matter. It was probably the funniest it I've ever seen. When I was in primary school at around 9 or 10, the headmaster came in holding a violin. It was school property and somebody had cracked it to the point where it was unusable. He gave a lengthy speech about respecting other people's property and how they'd now ruined it for anyone else who wanted to learn. By the end of his diatribe, he was yelling. Someone snickered, to which he responded by smashing the violin down on the table into smithereens. A small splinter hit a kid in the eye who started crying. Headmaster gave no ducks, threw the remains on the ground, and walked out. The other would probably be when I was fighting some kid for being racist as it towards me, like, the worst I ever encountered. We were tussling. Teacher comes in to break it up from behind the bully. Bully elbows teacher in the face. Teacher went bright red and put the kid in a chokehold and dragged him kicking and screaming out of the classroom. I think that was technically the first fight I ever won, even though it was a technicality. In 10th grade my culinary arts teacher hit me because I ate some cake batter. Not my story, but my dad's. He's English and went to an all-boys school. One of the teachers had a really bad stammer that the boys would make fun of, under their breath or out of earshot. Dad said that the guy must have been aware of it, but nothing overt ever happened in class. I guess at the start of term he was taking attendance. J. John. S. Myth. The boys answered respectfully with, "Present," until he got to one boy who answered in an even more severe stammer. P. Present. The teacher looked up from his list, red in the face, and swooped over to the toe rag that had answered and boxed him hard on both ears, and the boy began to cry. "Sir, he really does have a stammer too." The kid was new and no one had told the teacher that he had a severe stammer. My dad says he's never seen anyone look so horrified in his entire life as that teacher did when he heard that. The teacher apologized to the lad and after that the teacher took him under his wing. He was a wicked smart kid, so the teacher made sure to call on him in class and wait patiently while the kid gave his answers. Dad said that he never heard so much as a snicker from anyone about the teacher's stammering for the rest of his schooling. I had a friend in class who got aggravated at a science teacher and said, "I hope your kid is born with webbed feet." Teacher immediately got in my friend's face and screamed, "Don't ever talk about someone's unborn baby." Grabbed him by the neck and escorted him to principal's office. The next day teacher, apologized to the whole class for the outburst. While I didn't talk to him personally, I understand my history teacher was fairly pissed off when the wall 3 feet away from his head exploded after a student put a bomb in it. That was long before the internet, so I'm not sure if events like that just didn't get the same kind of publicity, or if they really didn't happen that much, but it had quite an impact on our school. In year 10 we had this awesome, young, mid-20s, English teacher that was proper on the level with the kids. I hated English but he really got us to engage with it. One less he was reading the book we were studying, hopping and jumping around, acting out the scene and doing the voices. 2 kids were talking whilst he was doing it and he ducking lost it, and rightly so. He started shouting at them about disrespecting him and the other students, how he was trying to do something nice and fun and all they could do was talk through it. He didn't get violent, but you could probably hear him the other side of our school. Later that year he died in a car crash and everyone that was in his class had to line up outside the school as the funeral procession went by. It was humbling seeing the kids that used to duck around, wear their uniform incorrectly and generally not give a duck about school just for those few minutes smarten themselves up and behave. There was genuine respect shown that day, and all I could think was why not everyone could have shown him the same respect in his lessons because the bloke really deserved it. Not a student but students. An old science teacher in junior high. I was somehow stuck in the class that was filled with the biggest idiots, assholes, whatevers in a single class. After about a month of the teacher being unable to get a word in edgewise, she finally snapped. She was showing us some tricks with dry ice. So she had a small bucket and a hammer and was smashing pieces here and there. After about 30 minutes of her trying to teach us and trying to quiet the class down, she yells really loud and slams the hammer on the table. She slammed down so hard that it took a chunk of the table out. Now, these were those beefy science tables. Ones with like a solid inch or two of marble or something. These ones. She broke off a piece of the table in the middle, threw the hammer on the ground, ran out the door crying, and quit on the spot. Next day we walk in, and the table had been replaced and we had a long-term sub till they could find a replacement science teacher for an entire semester. TLDR, made a teacher rage quit teaching. About 2 years ago my religious studies teacher in high school had her dad die of cancer, after which she took a few months off from teaching, during which we had several substitutes. When she got back to teaching in the first lesson, some of the kids in my class were loud and annoying, as classes in my school usually get when we've had nothing but barely trained substitute teachers in our class for several lessons, but a bit too much and no one was getting ready to start class activities. After about 10 minutes of loudness and no one paying attention to her or settling down to start the lesson, she snapped at us and started yelling at us about how her dad had died and how much it had affected her and how much of disrespectful it's we were being. It was honestly the scariest few minutes in all of my high school experience, but I suppose we deserved it. There was absolutely no sound except for her for the whole time she was ranting. The noise level hardly rose again for the entirety of the lesson. Everyone felt so awful for themselves. Edit. Grammar. Edit 2. Okay, it's affected, I got it. Had a math teacher get red in the face screaming at me. I wrote for your grave 4 equals a Frode on the board before class. She comes in and starts screaming WHO did this. Over and over. I raised my hand and she started screaming about how it wasn't funny. Then told me I wasn't going to pass the class or get anywhere in life. I had an A in the class. Joke's on her though, because I work at McDonald's. Junior high science teacher. A week or two prior she had gotten a call that her sister died in a fire after a car accident, so obviously she left for a week to deal with all the it. Well, when she came back, some asshole kid was being a pain in the ass as always, so she yelled at him a bit more than usual and sent him to the principal's office, and as he's packing his things he said, "I hope you die in a fire like your rich sister." The teacher ducking lost it. She starts screaming at him, calling him a little ducker and all this it. She tried to throw a chair at him, but me and some of the other big kids kind of held her back while the kid is standing there laughing, so some of the other kids kicked him out and dragged him to the principal's office. And after we calmed the teacher down, she ran out of the room bawling and we never saw her again. At the very beginning my final year of school we got this teacher who was pregnant. You now should know where this is going. Despite her pregnancy, she was really hot, so the guys loved her. However, the girls hated her. Anyways, one day one of the girls forgot her homework, and the teacher became furious. Threw the biggest fit I ever saw, yelled her lungs out, crying at the same time, while calling the girl more names than I ever thought existed. She was a literature teacher, so she got to know her it. Anyway, that girl decided that she wouldn't have none of that it, so she had the brilliant idea to talk back. The teacher cried her eyes out and left the room. She took an early maternity leave. The men were sad, the girls rejoiced, and we learned a valuable lesson about hormones. I had a teacher that dressed really well, expensive suits. She insulted me. My parents were not well off and it had been a while since I had been for a haircut, by calling me Eddie Munster. One day while she walked between the seats I held out a Sharpie drawing a line across the bottom of her jacket. She noticed about 15 minutes later and started screaming, "Who did this?" Nobody ratted me out and she ended up ripping the jacket off, throwing it, and stormed out of the room. I had an amazing teacher we called Mr. D. Everyone knew he was a war vet and was rumored to have seen Summit while overseas. One day one of the guys in my class stands up and screams air raid. Mr. D mid-sentence dove head first over his desk and cowered behind it. After a few seconds he slowly stood up with a look of death in his eyes. He grabbed the kid by the throat with one hand and carried him this way to the hallway. Kid's feet completely off the ground. Mr. D was not a small man. I'm not sure what happened in the hallway, but there was a hell of a lot of screaming by Mr. D and whimpering by kid. Had a music teacher in grade 6 that everyone disliked. She has a ridiculous penchant for ABBA and was forcing us to play ABBA and ABBA only. After 3 months of this we were all going a little stir crazy, and during one lesson in particular she could not pull us back together. Her usual tactic was to point someone out and ask them to play their part solo, so everyone else had to be quiet. We didn't have respect for her, but respected music performance nonetheless. This time round she went for the big guns and hushed us down before asking the star student to perform. The girl straight up microphone dropped her flute and said no. The teacher flipped out beyond control and ended up destroying her electronic keyboard by smashing it with her fists. Quite a sight to witness. I once saw a teacher shove a student backwards into a chair. The student shouted, "You can't do that." The teacher said, "Well, I just did it, didn't I?" Back in high school, 1970s, a student shoved a teacher and the teacher punched him in the face. The teacher took a leave of absence and then returned to teaching again. In middle school, a kid managed to put a used condom and some open ketchup packets in the pay teacher's pocket. Needless to say, when he eventually reached in his pocket and pulled out a used condom covered in ketchup, his hand and pocket as well, he was ducking pissed. In high school we were all chatting and fooling around while we waited for the teacher. The teacher finally arrives and she had this weird 1,000-yard stare on her face. She was usually very charming and cheerful. She sits in her desk in complete silence for a moment while we continue to fool around. Suddenly she says, "Be quiet. Yesterday I had a miscarriage and I'm not in the mood to deal with you right now." It felt like an ice bomb fell on the classroom. We sat awkwardly in silence while the teacher gave her class in a weird, serious and monotone voice. After she finished her class she left without saying goodbye and we never saw her again. My high school English teacher found out that during vocab tests students would put the study sheet under their desks on top of their backpacks and cheat. She came in crying, yelling, and slamming books down, saying that cheating was her #1 rule breaker and couldn't believe we do that and how disappointed in us she was. I was not one of those who cheated. She told us all that none of what happened left that room so she could basically do the same to the next class afterwards, since this was happening in multiple classes she taught. A student excused himself to go to the bathroom and 10 minutes later our teacher gets a call from another teacher asking about what had just happened. She blew her gasket and punished the entire class, cheaters and non-cheaters alike, by making us write a 12-page paper for our final instead of watching a movie and chilling out like previously planned. Back in 10th grade we had an English teacher who had a rather unhealthy obsession with her dog. We'd go to class and hear about Trapper at least 4 times a week. I had her for 2 classes so I actually got a double dose. Later that year we had a pet rally or assembly of some sorts in the gymnasium and lo and behold there sits Trapper. She actually brought the dog to school for the assembly. This wasn't a toy dog but was a smaller breed for sure. A Schnauzer if I recall correctly. Anyways, remember making those rubber band slingshots and using half of a paperclip as ammunition? Well, 2 of the students decided it would be a brilliant idea to use these and start shooting them right at her dog. I remember being torn listening to the pooch yelp every time it got pelted between admiration for their aim and pity for the poor beast. The teacher was confused for quite a while regarding what was happening. Then she saw one of them take aim and it hit the fan. I'm fairly certain everyone in the gymnasium heard her as she immediately flew into a rage. They most definitely noticed her face as it turned a shade of red, which somehow even managed to overpower the multiple layers of makeup she was wearing. She stormed into the bleachers and quite literally dragged both students out by their ears. I wish I could remember what punishment they received, but alas, the dog was just fine aside from some sore spots, although I can't recall another time that she ever brought it to school with her. Well, it happened to me. I had a bad case of senioritis which led to the school eventually telling me if I missed any more class, I wouldn't graduate. So I started going to school regularly and one day my shop teacher marked me absent, thought I was there. I brought it up in class that he had marked me gone, with the whole class backing me up while he tried to say I wasn't there. He eventually got so mad he stood on a metal ring holding the chair's legs together to yell, "The it's flowing so thick, I'll just stand up here." Only he was interrupted by the metal ring busting and him eating it. Cue the class busting up laughing as he gets up, grabs the chair and throws it across the entire shop, yelling incoherently, "Think Don Vito from Viva La Bam," at everyone. He left early that day and hated me for the rest of the year. 5th grade. Kid's name was Andy Gaskell. This kid decided to use the fire extinguisher in class. My teacher ripped this kid a new one. It was one of the most terrifying things I have ever witnessed. My teacher tolerated no it. Teachers from other classes would send their misbehaving kids to my class so my teacher can yell at them. Well, ex post from the burn thread. We had a girl with cerebral palsy in our class who was deaf, nearly blind, mute, and wheelchair-ridden. She was intellectually sound, just in an unfortunate body. She had a sign language interpreter. One day during an assembly, our teacher caught a pair of older students making fun of her sign language, twiddling their fingers around and doing the retarded hand thing. So, we get told to go back to the classroom on our own. We think we're in serious trouble or something since we did see anything happen. Then, he comes back into the room with the kids in tow. He stands them at the front of the class and tells us what they had been doing. Then he tells us that people who make fun of others like that are not good and they do it because they've never been on the other end of it. They don't know how to empathize. That's why he brought them here. He told us we could laugh if we wanted, and many of us did. Once he made them apologize to the girl and they started crying. He lead them out of the room. Justice porn with a harsh reality check mixed with a burn. TLDR guys made fun of handicapped classmate and friend. Teacher put them on the receiving side of ridicule to show how it isn't fun. We got to laugh at them. In 3rd grade my friend wouldn't stop singing a John Mellencamp song to our substitute teacher. She paddled him, and after each of the 23 licks she made him sing "Come On Baby Make It Hurt So Good." Back in high school, probably 1998 or 1999, a student in my Spanish class went to our teacher, "Yo itch, get the duck off me," when she tried to get him out of his classroom. She slapped him across the face. It was bedlam. We had a teacher throw a desk at a student in high school. Psycho kid in 4th year attacked the teacher with scissors. The teacher wrestled the scissors away, then dragged the kid down the hall by his hair. In high school, a woodshop teacher saw a senior boy bullying a freshman girl. She was kind of plain Jane shy kid and Mr. Thompson was not having it. He didn't say a word, just grabbed the bully by the throat and literally pushed him up the wall and stared at him. Kid's feet were a foot off the floor. Held him there about half a minute, then let him drop. Mr. Thompson was a huge man with hands like a lumberjack, so this was no problem. Nothing happened to him, but this was a rural school. Same school had a geometry teacher that would knock stuff into the floor so he could bend down and look up girls' skirts he always assigned to front seats. Good ole days. Me. My teacher got so mad at me and my friend not paying attention in class that she slammed both of our heads together. When I complained that I would eventually tell my mom and get her fired, she threw a chair at me and my friend. She was eventually fired, of course.